Hey guys, Logan here, and welcome back to my MCU series. I'm nearing the end of my MCU series of reviews leading up to Ant-Man and the Wasp. I already reviewed most MCU films that I have not done a review for. So one of the last two reviews in my MCU series one of them is going to be for Avengers: Age of Ultron, directed once again by Joss Whedon, who directed the first Avengers movie. When Tony Stark and Bruce Banner tried to jumpstart a dormant peacekeeping program called Ultron, things go horribly wrong, and it's up to Earth's mightiest heroes to stop the villainous Ultron from enacting his terrible plan. This is like the 10th MCU film ever made, and like I said, it's directed by Joss Whedon, and it has almost every single cast member from the first few films, including Avengers, the first one. And this film also had new additions to the cast, like the guy who played Quicksilver and the girl who played Scarlet Witch in this movie, as well as James Spader, who played the voice of Ultron, the main villain of this film. And Avengers: Age of Ultron, I will say, is a good film. Not a great film, but a good film, I will say. There are issues there and there, and I'll get into the issues in just a few minutes. But first, almost every single cast member in this film, Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr., Mark Ruffalo, and Chris Hemsworth, everybody else, every actor and actress who was a part of this film, did a fantastic job of playing the characters that they played. They did an outstanding job with their performances as the characters that they played, and are really irreplaceable as the characters that they played, particularly Chris Evans as Captain America and Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. One opening scene where we see the Avengers in just one shot teaming up to go after Hydra at one of their bases, and that was a great opening scene. I loved that scene so much. It was epic, and it's very reminiscent to the one shot in the first Avengers film. And a few epic moments like that happened in this film as well, like the one action scene later on in the second half of this film, where we get to see the Iron Man and Hulk fight, where Hulk was possessed by the Scarlet Witch to do some things that Ultron told her to do, or ordered her to do. And the final battle between the Avengers and Ultron with his army of clones, that was also pretty epic. This movie is pretty epic with its epicness. Just plenty of epic moments in this entire film you can definitely see or find in this entire film. This is probably one of the most epic films that Marvel Studios has ever made, just based on how epic it was and how intense it was. But does that make it a great movie by any means? For the most part, it doesn't. But again, the action, the choreography with the fight scenes, and the direction, and the special effects, and everybody else, and just everything that you can come up with positively about Avengers: Age of Ultron, they're there. They're fantastic. And the story, it was not much of a story that you can remember by, but it was pretty solid, to say the least. And the Vision's introduction scene, I thought was pretty cool. I liked that scene. It was... the music with that scene was pretty good. It felt like a Hans Zimmer type of epic music in the background for scenes like that. And the humor also was done very well. There was one shot where we see Venom lifting up Thor's hammer, and everybody else was like, "Did he just lift up Thor's hammer?" And Vision was giving Thor his hammer. It was such a great scene. It was such a great scene. I laughed my ass off whenever I watched this scene, and just stuff like that. This movie was pretty good in terms of the positives that I have mentioned. Now, let's get into the negatives that I have with this film. the biggest issue out of all the issues that I have with Avengers: Age of Ultron is the main villain, Ultron. Now James Spader, I will say this, he did a very good job with his voice as Ultron. He did good on the voiceover. It's not to be questioned. He did good on that voice, but his character really comes across as funny much more than he was intimidating, and that's probably the most disappointing part about Avengers: Age of Ultron to me. He just comes off as more funny than intimidating, and that's like a letdown part of this film, I guess you could call letdown. Whenever you have a film that is like a villain, you are supposed to be intimidated by this villain, not just with the things that he did, but with the motives that he was bringing out for why he does some really bad things, but makes you understand where he's coming from with his motives and the things that he did, and explain why he did. You were supposed to be, intimidated by it, but also get where he's coming from. That is not the case with Ultron for me. He's just a funny villain to me, and that's not a good sign. There's like this whole quote, an old quote that said something like, "Your movie is only as good as your villain." And to me, Ultron is just not a good villain. Another issue that I have with Avengers: Age of Ultron is that it got a little bit too bloated, especially within at least some of the scenes that were meant to be epic. Don't get me wrong, and I mentioned this earlier in this review. This movie is pretty epic, is filled with epicness within it. And I wasn't that bothered by it, as long as it's not been overdone or been used over, or it wasn't been overused. And I feel like the epicness within this movie was kind of been overused in this entire film, honestly. Now, those are all the issues that I have with this film. Other than that, I had a good time watching Avengers: Age of Ultron, despite being overloaded at times with the overuse of its epicness, and the main villain, which comes off as a typical generic MCU villain that turned out to be more funny than intimidating. That shouldn't be the case with Ultron, but it is. So for that reason, I was disappointed. But overall, I'm not saying this is a bad movie. I'm just saying that this film wasn't perfect. There are flaws with it, but overall I had a good time watching Avengers: Age of Ultron. It's just not as great as the first Avengers or Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I'm going to give Avengers: Age of Ultron a gold medal of honor. So anyway, guys, that is my review for Avengers: Age of Ultron. My next review in my MCU series, and also my last review in my MCU series, is going to be for Ant-Man. And it will be up on June 26th. I think that's the date for it. So yeah, 26th of June will be the day that I will upload my last review in my MCU series. So be on the lookout for that. If you guys enjoyed my review, please click the like button and comment down below if you have already watched this movie, and let me know what you think of it. If you enjoyed what you've seen here and you want to see future videos from me, please press right there to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great week, Battle Squad, and as always, fight the good fight.